This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Shaun Cole, and welcome to today's Friday edition of the Pit Stop. We really call it the Sim Tunnel. I'm here with Billy Strange. Billy, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm pumped up. It's Friday. I'm going to apologize before we even get started. This show could be a train wreck. Last week, the whole system crashed. I've been having all sorts of issues. Apparently, I need to format my system. So, should everything go crazy? And with that, we are running behind. So, who knows? Today's show is going to be in the real tempo and theme of the Pit Stop or the Sim Tunnel. That being, we're just here to talk. Like talk, not just cover the news.
And slightly out of control.
Yeah, and slightly out of control. So, I turn to the audience. What are you guys up to? What are you driving? What are you having fun with, playing with in the world of sim racing? And then I turn to Billy. What are you up to, Billy? What's this week of sim racing been for you?
Let's see. I put out a video on, what was it, Monday or Tuesday, doing race room Bathurst with the GT3 cars. That was pretty fun. And then I just finished and uploaded this morning another Bathurst video with Assetto Corsa with that nice Soul mod in there, doing the 12-hour cycle from, looks like Bathurst starts about 5:45 in the morning. So that whole day to night cycle, or really it starts in the morning to not just into sunset. The sun just starts to go down. And it looks amazing. Rewrote the AI in that one. But it turned out pretty good. That one took me longer. There was a few more things to learn with that AI on that track, just because they don't like making the top of the mountain. They just kind of shoot off into the distance. So I had to figure out how to slow them down so that they'd make the mountain. Other than that, that literally consumed my whole week.
That's the way it goes sometimes.
Well, yeah.
Well, last week we heard you describe what it took to do that AI. So it's like just that alone, it's like that could be days of your free time right there.
Well, yeah, and that was the learning process, but then I had to learn more this time. So it took me about 9 hours, 8-9 hours to figure out how to do more tweaks to the AI, because initially doing the stuff that I did at Daytona I did that really quick. That only took me like an hour. But then when I started trying to get the AI, I was like, oh, this isn't working. Oh, what's different? And so I had to just start playing with it, and I had to learn a few more tips and tools.
There, you know what? You're gonna get a call from the developer, like, "Hey, Mr. Strange, would you mind doing the AI for our sim?"
You know, I like it actually. I like learning. I like learning that kind of stuff. But then I also fixate on something like that. Once I start it, like, it's just, I don't quit. So, what have you been doing? What have you been messing with?
You know, is it ironic, coincidental? I don't know. You know, on last weekend, our patron race was rally car racing, funny enough. And simultaneous that, and again, coincidence, I don't know, but I've been testing a handbrake. So I'm using, like, the most extreme handbrake that I've ever seen. This is the Ricmotech Real Gear Rally Pro Extreme in the name handbrake. Anyway, but that meant that I've been playing Project Cars 2 Rally. I've been playing Dirt Rally 4. I've been playing Wreckfest. I've been doing the rally cars in iRacing. And if it required a handbrake to drive, the only thing I didn't do much of was drifting. But that's not me. I like rally, you know, so it's like I can test a handbrake perfectly without drifting. So that's the one discipline that many people would buy a handbrake for that I didn't really do that much of. So anyway, but it was fun. I mean, I love rally car racing. And I'm so focused on so many other disciplines that I do regularly, you know, like the endurance racing effort that we're putting in, or contemplating running the Daytona 500, that kind of stuff. And rally is the thing that, even though I love it so much, I only get to do it for fun or when I can make some time. So getting to make the time to rally car race, and, like, you know, even just looking at the difference in my lap times, because I was, like, getting back to it, you know, and it was like, oh wow, this is great, and I'm pretty good at it. It just took getting back into it, and yeah, it was a fun week of driving, and almost all in the dirt this week.
I find it usually takes me a good half an hour to an hour to kind of get reacclimated to doing any sort of rally kind of stuff. Even though dirt is my background, doing it in a sim is a little different. So I think a month ago or two, I tried dirt rally. I hadn't tried it for a long time. Oh man, I was rusty. I was everywhere. It took me a while to kind of like settle down and remember how to hit all my marks and all that stuff. It was
You know what's
hard.
awesome is coming off of last week's rally car race, and when I announced that we were doing rally car to the patron group, like literally there was a silence in the room. Like nobody was happy that we were doing this.
I was fine with it.
End of the race, everyone was enjoying, I mean, like more than enjoying, like really loving it. And then on top of that, Tim Chitwood and Devin Booth started a dirt rally series with the patron group that's now going on. So it's like just getting out there and getting in the dirt totally motivated and inspired people to, hey, wait, this dirt stuff is really, really fun. And some guys, I think, were like afraid of it and then realized, hey, this is the discipline that I naturally fit with even. You know, and that's the thing you have to think about with all the different types of sim racing available. Some, let's face it, you might love this, but maybe you're better suited to drive that because of your driving style or just something about the way you gel with the physics or the way it works,
right.
You know? So, anyway, yeah, a lot of rally. That was what I was up to. What about you, Brandon?
That sounds like a good time.
You do any driving?
I did do some driving, actually, and hi, everybody. I starting to warm up endurance stuff, so I've been spending a little time on the track in Florida and handling some admin stuff behind the scenes there. Yeah, totally focused on that.
I forgot I did a whole Sebring session as well.
That's how much fun your rally stuff was.
It's true, and Sebring is one of my favorites, and I had a good time doing that too. So it's been a hell of a week. All right, should we move on to news?
Yeah, we can move on to the news.
All right,
we must.
I don't know if I have any of this in order. I'll go first, just
We're
because.
just gonna wing it.
Yeah, we're gonna wing it. We don't have anything to show you on this, but we talk about often KartKraft. There is an update that they talked about in their Discord channel, so this wasn't very public, but there is an update early next week, and this includes a couple of big things in this one. Physics update, which is really important because, you know, that always helps the sim itself. And then the big topic, because, you know, we have our sayings around here, you know, like no VR, no buy, no handbrake, no buy. I don't know. Everybody's got their own version of it. But,
their own version of no buy.
Yeah. But they are talking about VR support. So that is really cool as well. So, which I had something to show you.
Yeah, I mean, that's exciting for everybody in the physics update. So I'm looking forward to the update.
Billy,
How many times can I say update?
You're not a VR guy, right?
No.
Just making sure, because yeah, I'm still on the fence on the whole VR thing. We can get back to that. All right, let's continue with the news. I think we have other things to talk about.
Conveniently and quickly changes the subject before anything starts to happen.
I just wow, Genie's box. Shut the door, quick, move on.
Before the revolt happens. Anyway.
We heard nothing.
Yeah, right. Codemasters has given us some blogs here that they've given us a road book, which shows off all of the car list at launch, at least. I kind of scrolled through this quickly. I noticed that there wasn't the launch 037 or 037, the Group B car rear-wheel drive. That's not in there. That was in the original Dirt Rally. So there's a few cars that weren't in there, but then there are cars... How did I say that? There's a few cars that are not on the list that were in Dirt Rally before, but then you have like this Datsun 240Z. That wasn't in there before. This Aston Martin V8 Vantage GT4. Apparently that's going to be a rally car. So it's an interesting list.
That is almost like fantasy rallying, it seems. GT4 cars. I mean, there's a couple of GT4s. You got the Camaro GT4.
It would make sense if it was like a hill climb, like a standard, tarmac or asphalt hill climb. I'm not familiar. Maybe there are dirt cars that do rally with these. I'm not sure. I haven't seen one. But I guess that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
At the very bottom here, they say, of course, the only car not shown above is the Porsche 911 RGT Rally Spec, which will only initially be available for those purchasing the Deluxe Edition or the Day 1 Edition. 60 days later, it'll become available as a separate DLC if you want to pick up and the is in a critical word looking at the car list, the Porsche.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Sure.
cool. They also have a peripheral list, which, depending on how you look at it, we did just mention VR, but this is the peripheral list, and it is specific to wheels. But basically, if your wheel says Fanatic, Logitech, or Thrustmaster, you're pretty much covered. If your wheel says Sim Steering or Sim Experience in the world of direct drive, you're covered. I don't see anything that says OSW or Granity software or anything like that, but I'm assuming that it will support that if it's doing the other direct drive wheels, or it'll work off of some basic profile.
Yeah, you would hope so.
Yeah, it should. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. PS Vita is supported as a controller. Anyway, pretty extensive list of controllers, but again, no VR on the list, and we're pretty convinced, right? We're pretty.
Did you just say a PlayStation Vita? It is right there. What in the? I bet you that's one of those extra screens or something that they're going to use, because that's bizarre.
It is really bizarre. SimLink Strike FX gamepad. Never heard of that. Anyway, some interesting things I've never heard of. But again, the most important thing is if your controller says Thrustmaster, Logitech, or Fanatic, the list of those supported products is pretty much everything under the sun, it seems. So that's good news for everybody. But no surprise. I mean, when you're talking Dirt Rally 2, I'd expect it to handle that kind of list, or we would just be beating them silly.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Can you imagine if they didn't?
That would be bad. That'd be super bad. You know,
they've already got enough problems with not supporting VR. Let's not get into let's not get into wheel and pedals.
Well, and I'm testing that handbrake. You know, that dang well better handle a third controller. So that's what they don't say here. Okay, so I'm using a Fanatic base, but what if I'm using a third, you know, a different company's pedals? So that's asking it to use two controllers. And what if I, God forbid...
They have been pretty good about it in the last handful of releases.
They have.
For supporting multiple USB inputs, so hopefully that trend just continues.
I think they know what would happen if they didn't. It does work with the Sparco handbrake mod, and they listed it twice, so the Plus and the standalone. So that's kind of an indicator right there.
Okay.
Because that's a plug-in on its own USB when you're talking about the Thrustmaster TSS handbrake Sparco mod, not the Plus model. That's PC-only standalone, not plugged into the wheel.
Okay.
So that implies another device right there.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah, good news, good news. Let's see, what else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Studio 397. They had their roadmap. I love this about them. Just as a concept of a company. Every month, and you can pretty much count on it on like the last, you get an update on what happened that month in case you missed it, what they're working on in the near and sometimes in the more distant future. And if you're a big fan of that sim, it lets you get excited about what's coming or what's there. But, you know, just quick reminders, few things. GT3 pack, we've talked about that. I mean, I'm already blue in the face on that one. Car paint editor, apparently there's some new tools and things available in the paint. So they do have a whole site, a documentation site. And actually, this is great news. You guys, or if you're a painter, you're going to want to know about this. But there is a link in that roadmap that gives you all of the how-to on how to paint a car with the new material system. So stand on it. Joa, Antonio, all of our painters out there, if you're looking on making cool ones, really good description on how to get that done. Official now, because I guess they, in their wording, they said you might have already guessed it, but the Formula E Gen 2 car, so Formula E. I love that car shape, by the way. I was watching a video of those racing, and that car looks awesome. It's very futuristic and at the same time very F1-ish at the same. And
it's very stylistic.
It is. It's.
I don't know how much of that is actually doing anything for the car, but it's very, very futuristic looking.
Agreed. I don't know if any of that works, but it looks cool.
Yeah, I mean,
in a futuristic way. No rear wing whatsoever on those things. Wow, two 12-inch rear wings.
Well, winglets. Is that what you want to call them?
Yeah. Anyway, actually, I'd love to know if anybody out there knows the actual aero performance on a Formula E, modern Formula E car. That'd be cool. They're in the roadmap talking about, and I've told it this, talking blue in the face, the Sebring 3 hour, the big race coming up on the 16th. What else?
Well, in that GT3, they were talking about, we had kind of commented a while ago when the Aston Martin finally got released that there wasn't a lot of livery choices. In fact, there was only one. Well, that's what they've added, is more livery choices in the GT3 stuff.
Well, that's good. That's super good, actually. Actually, look at that. That's a beautiful... I'm looking at the shots right there of the GT3 cars out on track, and it's like, you know what?
Yes.
Now it looks like a racing series. You know?
Yep, some of them are real. Some of them are fantasy. So they did us a favor and gave us just some more options for those of us that are paint challenged.
You know what I like about that blog is I think it kind of puts it in perspective. I mean, I don't know the size or the scope of Studio 397, but look how many irons they have in the fire, and just where they're referring to 1 month alone. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's kind of gives you an idea how much they actually have on their plates.
A lot more than when it was pre-Studio 397. That's for sure. Their pace.
At least, yeah, that's what it seems like, at least.
They also did mention in this about working on the audio for the Grand Tour game.
And they licensed the physics engine. They licensed the physics to did I chuckle? I didn't mean to chuckle there. Amazon Game Studios for Grand Tour game. Sorry. I tried to keep that composure. It didn't work.
Let's just hope that that is the last time we ever mention that game again.
Well, you know what? It's popping up in the most unexpected places. I mean, if you would have asked me, there would have been, hey, guess what R Factor 2 and Studio 397 did? This would not have been one of those things.
No. Nope.
They also talked about the Nord. Let's see if hopefully I remember this right, but I believe they talk about the Nordschleife, and it's going to slip back from when their first predictions to release, basically saying that they got their materials in the scan about 2 months later than they had originally anticipated. So that's pushed back. What else they got?
The good news is that the Formula E Gen 2 does come with that new track, or they're releasing a track with it. So it's not a real life one. It's a fictional track, but at the same time, as far as content goes, that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
There we go.
They talked about working on the Tatis car. Something else that'll be coming soon. And the other thing that's really important to me, and we could almost go a whole tangent on this, but one of the things they're talking about is their competition system and new UI are the highest priority things our developers are working on right now. Competition system. You know, that right there is something that's going to be a bigger deal. You know, iRacing, forget the sim itself. It's their competition structure, their point structure, their hosting, all of that has made them unique. And I am watching the other companies getting more involved with competition systems, point structures, and sometimes it's third-party like sim racing systems for Assetto Corsa or for Race Room. Sometimes it's internal, because that could be a game changer for R Factor too.
Well, Race Room is also working on their own.
Yeah.
They're working on their own competition system. Obviously, we have ACC, which they are having to rewrite their whole multiplayer part of the game because it is not functioning like they want it to.
Yeah. So that could be cool. That's something I'd be really eager to see come to R Factor 2. I mean, that's the thing. R Factor 2, I keep saying it. It's one of those, it's like a wine. You know, it's a red wine. I'm not even a wine guy, but, you know, R Factor 2 wasn't even ready to be drunk for a few years. You know, it would have just been bitter. I don't know what bad, you know, I don't know wine. I should come up with a better analogy.
You're talking about stuff I have no idea.
Anyway, it was never quite ready. And now it's getting into those first years where it's a good wine, and if you wait just a little longer, it'll become a great wine. And I think that's where I feel like we're at with R Factor 2 right now.
Can I ask you a question, since have you been on iRacing basically since the beginning, Shaun?
Yes, since day one.
So I want to ask you a question then, since you've been doing this, and they've obviously had updates, and they introduced the incident point system and things like that, the safety rating. Did at one point that system work as it's intended to? Because it seems the further they've gone along, it doesn't work as it's intended to now. In other words, iRating doesn't mean the same thing it used to. Licenses doesn't mean the same thing that it used to, maybe then when it first got introduced. But that's coming from somebody that, I've only been doing iRacing realistically a couple of years, 2-3 years. So from somebody that started from the beginning and has watched all those changes, what do you think?
I don't think it ever really worked as well as it could have worked from the very beginning. And I also do think that it's kind of lost some of its ability. The safety rating became just way too easy to fudge. So it really didn't matter. And you'd get, and then even on the iRating to an extent, because one of the problems, like me and Brandon had a whole conversation about iRating hunting, and I'm going to be doing something on the show about that coming up pretty soon. And it's like, there's so many weird factors, but like, you can get in a Mazda race with guys with like 1200 iRating that are running like alien lap times because maybe it's a new account. Maybe they're a really gifted racer. They just happen to be new to iRacing. And then you get a lot of ringers that just kind of hang out. And so what also ends up happening is if you get in a race room that's only one split, then that whole strength of field is like, it comes down to too much luck versus skill to actually earn those points to an extent.
Sure. So do you think that the solution for not just iRacing, but for all of these studios that are trying to implement some sort of a competition model for their multiplayer, is it a mix of qualifying and some sort of rating like iRating or like a safety rating? Is it a mix where you still use qualifying but also use, or maybe it's a per basis on that event that you're going to do, like you have to run 10 laps or 5 laps, and depending on how many offs you have and that kind of thing, like that gives you a rating for that race?
Sure, well, or even kind of like a hybrid combination of the two. Like maybe your iRating are the points that you would have won for your victory are immediately being penalized by your on-track behavior. So you might even see the guy in second place get more points because he ran a clean race. Mm-hmm. That kind of scenario could be kind of cool.
Right.
I think, like, in the case of iRacing, I think one of the problems is they have too many sanctioned races so that it changes the magnitude of any race, Okay. And I think that if, I just think that if they made it smaller so there was more participation, then it would all be more valid. But because it gets so diluted and spread out across everywhere, that there's kind of very little rhyme or reason. I mean, if you run in one series, you could just be in a high point series and you're earning more than people who are running just as much, just as clean in a different series, but it just doesn't have the same crowd. And to me, I mean, on one hand, that's fair because you're beating more people, so to speak. But it just, because it's so all over the place, unless you become like you have to become an iRating hunter, and then that's kind of what makes it all wrong. It's like, well, if I can become an iRating hunter, then it doesn't really make the point system make sense either. It's almost cheating. It's not, but it is almost cheating. Mm-hmm. But it is what you have to do. You have to do some
you're
research.
Gaming the system.
You have to research. You have to, and I guess not owning that is a cop-out. Because if you're a real competitor, one of the parts of competing is understanding the series of the rules or whatever. But I'm like, I just want to race, and I just want to race a little of everything, and that doesn't necessarily reward the driver very well. I don't know. It's a very tough question. I think without live marshaling, it's really impossible because,
Yeah.
you know, you can just have your world ruined by somebody else, and they can literally pay like almost no penalty unless you're going to file a grievance. And that's not going to change the points. It's just going to put them on watch.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I was just curious. It's since everybody seems to be going in this direction, and we've seen, you know, is there a case for making it per discipline rather than, I believe SRS just does one rating for road. Doesn't matter the sim you're racing in, and iRacing to a certain extent does that as well. You know, road, oval, dirt, both dirt road and dirt oval. You know, should it be more specialized? Because, you know, you get a guy that's running really good in, let's say, the truck series, but then he tries to jump to the NIS or something like that. The cup cars, those are different enough, just like running maybe the modifieds or going road. You know, do we need it to be more specific for formula versus tin tops, that kind of thing? Maybe that's part of the problem, is it's too broad of a reach in these scenarios. Same thing, like I was saying, same thing with SRS. You're not even talking about per discipline. You're talking about it encompasses all road racing on all the sims that are available in there.
Yeah. You know, that's a great point, because if you use, you know, and I'm not trying to, this is just using iRacing as an example. I'm not really faulting their system as much, but the iRating is a great way of kind of knowing where you stand on the whole, like in the ladder system of people who compete, because there are a lot of people who don't even compete in that way. You can't, you know, there are people who league race who iRating doesn't apply. But when you get to the big events, it really points out the flaw in that system, because you might have a guy who has a 7,000 iRating because he runs in a open-wheeled Formula 1 league, and now the big race is GT3 cars, and he might be literally terrible in that car, you know, and to no fault of his own, he might even know that, but he's trapped into racing as a 6,000 or 7,000 iRating, and when he switches drastically discipline, it doesn't change that. And if they did, again, the Mazda series is a great example of this too. You have such a huge spread of talent in a Mazda race, that if the rating was based on what you've done in the Mazda, it would change the rankings a lot. Yeah, I think it'd be much more accurate that way. That's for sure.
Okay, I was just curious. You know, I have a different, slightly different perspective, because I coming in as a newer, I'm not going to say new, but a newer person to iRacing. It's always been a bit interesting. I don't associate ability with iRacing.
Now,
or iRating, sorry.
In real life,
two shots fired. No, I meant iRating.
In real life, if you're a great racer and you change series, they basically treat you like a rookie. They don't give you much credit for what you did in the past. You know, I mean, not that it matters, because it's it depends. A race per points per race world. You know, only one race. It's not like there's 24 races today. Anyway.
Yeah, it would depend on the driver. I've been in scenarios where I was not forced to run rookie flags and stuff like that because of my past history in racing sprint cars or something like that. So I think there's a little bit of fudge factor there. They sit there and go, okay, you've proven yourself over here. We know you can at least get around the track safely.
Right.
So, Billy, chat wants to know, as far as the iRating goes, if you race a lot, do you still feel that doesn't account for ability?
No, because then who were you racing against?
Fair enough.
I mean, you can still gain iRating. I'm not saying that it doesn't do anything. Obviously, it'll show something. But I guess the purpose for the question initially was, I don't know if it means as much now as it did even a handful, a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because it feels like things have changed where you can game the system a little easier. And I often see worse driving in higher splits. If the person gets out and away from everybody else, they can put the fastest, most consistent laps down I have ever seen. I will never get close to those guys. I'm not saying they do not have the ability to drive. My more criticism comes in the racecraft part, where I see people making odd choices in passing and that thing. And it's not just, oh, that was a mistake. It's like, that was never going to work. But yet they have a 5K I rating. It's like, well, how did you get this high with doing that kind of stuff? Well, it's because they've always been in the front of the field and they were always so fast that they never really had to deal with anybody else. So they built their I rating up starting at the front of the grid, and all of a sudden they finally get into where they're racing with other faster people, or they have to battle with somebody, and then they lose their marbles because they don't know actually how to race and adjust against somebody that is close to their same speed.
Right.
Yep.
I'm not saying that's everybody. I'm just saying it's something that I notice.
Yeah.
And I'd agree. It's possible to game that system, especially where I know for a fact it's possible to game it on the license side for your safety rating. But I know I've done it before. You can gain a license class in about 3 hours if you want, provided there's enough official races going on to do that. And then doing research, because, even me personally, I've been kind of criticized and saying, well, your I rating should be higher. Your I rating doesn't reflect your skill level. And
I've said that to you.
I know. I didn't want to call you out on that, Shaun. But the reality of it is that you can game that too. You know what I mean? And it's after doing research and trying to figure out where to invest my time wisely. The information's out there. If you want to go and game your I rating up to where you're 3, 4, 5,000, it's easy enough to do.
Well, here's the thing for me too. In the world that we race in, for the most part, this isn't eSport. This is friendly competition. There is no money at stake. There is no sponsorship at stake. This is pride, respect of your peers to an extent is what we race for in the world of online racing. And so when I think of it that way, and I think of the whole I rating system, I don't think that the safety rating has much to do with anything, because like Brandon said, I mean, anybody can get whatever license they want if they have the patience to do it and they understand. I mean, and if anybody doesn't know how to do it, it doesn't matter if you're dead last in the race. Just don't go off the track, don't hit anything, and you get massive safety rating.
It's all about the amount of turns you are
corners per incident.
Yeah. Corners per incident.
And so some people confuse, but they have I rating and safety rating have nothing to do with each other, and that irks me, because without marshaling, it actually rewards drivers who are kind of willing to just be the jerks and make those dive bombs and spin out people, because the penalties don't hurt you versus the score that you're judged by with being your I rating. So if I need to give that guy a tap to win the race, there is no penalty, because whatever I lose on the safety rating, all I have to do is go spend an hour driving clean, and I've cured those woes. And
right.
Meanwhile, I'm hurting someone else's I rating, taking them down because now they're out of the race. And I know incidents happen, but I believe it happens more in online racing because we don't have to pay for the damage, and we don't have to go to the infield hospital, and we don't have to go to the real hospital, and all of those, and the endless amount of practice that allow us to drive at 11 tenths all the time.
Right.
And I think all those factors mean that, I mean, yes, there's lots of incidents in real life racing. There is more incidents and more bonehead, ridiculous maneuvers done in online racing by a long shot, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. I would agree. It's just something that I've I've noticed in, you know, part of it is unintended consequences. The willingness in the top split to find those cuts and those little tiny things that will make them more competitive, which, so if they make an unsafe pass, or if they, you know, get an off track, they don't care. It's not that big of a deal to them. So you often have more incidents in the top splits than you do the bottom split, because those guys are more, they haven't quite got there. You know, you can go through like the Daytona 24. They were talking about this when they were trying to figure out their I rating, or not the I rating, but the incident count. You know, does it do what it's supposed to do? There's arguments for both sides, and then it gets into, well, the top split is getting a lot of incidents because they're pushing the car so hard. So they'll have a wreck with a slower car, or they'll have an off track because they're trying to push those limits, where the guys in the lower split, they're just trying to make sure they have a clean race so that they can get promoted, get a little more I rating, get a little more safety rating. They haven't gotten to the point where they're trying to, you know, find all those little advantages. So I get all that. I was just, again, it's just things that I watch. Sometimes they're great races, and sometimes you sit there and you go, that probably wouldn't have worked anyway, no matter which way you slice that one. It's not going to happen. So yeah. I think it's unintended consequences. I think the ideas put forth, whether it be iRacing or SRS or any of these systems that anybody's coming up with, are still good ideas, and they work fine. It's just unintentionally has it caused just some other things to work out, maybe that they don't want it to work out that way.
Yeah.
Well, and
I think it's...
Go ahead, Brandon. Sorry. No, you please. I was going to say,
it's probably anytime you have an official system like this, and granted, I personally feel iRacing system's probably the best we have in sim racing, right? It's what all the other sims seem to aspire to as far as an online system. You know, for putting you in a race with somebody that's a similar skill, or, you know, something along those lines. But even if you look at real life racing, there's always gaming in those systems. And Billy, you probably have firsthand knowledge with this, and, you know, especially the more layers they add to it, like with NASCAR, where they have their segments, and, you know, they reward points for fastest qualifiers and leading at a certain point and all this stuff. And, you know, there's guys that get into championship hunts and, you know, don't win races, or only win one or two races, and another guy dominates but has one bad race, you know. So I think you can get it anywhere. It's just, where do we go from here, you know, to get past the gamesmanship of the point system?
There was a guy that ran, you know, at my home track in sprint cars, and they made sure they didn't qualify too high so that they could start at the front of the heat race, so that they made the A main every time, and then they would start, you know, towards the front, because then there's a random draw, and you rarely got a 0, which meant the fast guy starts on the pole. So half the time they would start at the very front of the A main, and then he'd go on to finish second or third or whatever it was, and he won the points championship just by gaming the system. So it's not like it doesn't happen in the real world. I'm not disparaging these guys by any means of taking advantage of the system itself.
No, but as the end user, we get to have an opinion on how it affects our enjoyment of what we're doing. That's what we're talking about here. You know, I hope, and the reason I don't mind taking a long diversion on this topic, the point of our show, but I hope that Studio 397 is listening. I hope Kunos is listening. But, you know, when 3 years ago we'd be having a discussion about how this company's physics, their company, and, you know, a physics battle, and how they're maybe learning from each other or copying each other on what works, and maybe straying away from what doesn't work. And I do believe all the sim companies are doing those kinds of things and comparing their stuff to their competitors. Well, now I'm glad that there's focus on a competition system. So with iRacing, maybe consider them leading the way as far as the most sophisticated system. You do have now that being a topic from sim to sim to sim to sim, and something they're focusing, which means that hopefully they'll start copying each other where it works, shying away from where it didn't work.
Right.
And the other thing I'm going to say is, for me, with the iRacing system as it is, we've already played with and seen the cures all. And there's one simple thing they can do that would almost fix both systems to an extent, or help both systems, the safety rating and the iRating. They need to start black flagging everybody. They need the incident limit on
black flags all around.
Everybody, man. If they need to make only 3 people finish, like when we're playing Wreckfest, until people get a clue on how to finish races and how to do it right, they need to make that incident limit tight, and maybe even tighter in the rookie series to promote clean racing above hot lap competitions during green flag conditions. You know, you cannot run your hot lap pace if you're on the outside of the corner fighting someone, but this perceived notion that they should still be privileged enough to still run that 58 flat, it's not going to happen under green flag. But if that's your mentality, and if every race you enter, that's your mentality, and you're cool with 8, 9, 10, 12, 27 incidents because it lets you, then all you have to do is go do some time trials, clean that up, and you're all set, spick and span.
Right.
If you got booted from the race, people would start cleaning up their act. We look at the endurance race and the whole, when they went too tight, which I never thought they did, by the way, or when they went open-ended, and what a nightmare scenario that opens the door for. And it's not fun in a 24-hour race if half the field gets booted, by the way, but I don't think that would be long-lived. People would learn very quickly, and they would clean up their act. And iRacing, you know, and I'm sure it wouldn't go over well either. People don't, you know, a lot of people don't want that. And by the way, I did see a donation.
David Payne.
David Payne. David,
Thanks,
bring
sir.
on the pain. Thank you. Okay. All right. Should we finish up news?
We probably should. I'm
Yeah.
super excited about these next 2 topics, but I'll let you guys handle it.
All right. You want to lead in,
Go for
Billy?
it, Shaun.
Oh, all right.
No,
I'll
go
in.
for it.
Okay. So, everybody watched the 24-hour, and everybody watched and saw Alex Zanardi. And I've talked about him on a show. One of my heroes. I mean, I can't imagine he's not everybody's hero if you're a sim racing guy. Anyway, hand controls. You know, sim racing, there are a lot of disabled drivers in sim racing. You might not know, and you very well could be losing to somebody who's not even using a pedal set. Anyway, a couple different things out there that just kind of are cool and perfectly timed with the Zanardi story and the hand controls at Daytona. But this is from Simability, and this is the Flying with Hybrid system under development. Looks like a Fanatic hub with an MPI wheel, but that giant right lever looks to me like it would be either a gas or a brake lever, and it looks like there's one on the left-hand side that is a little obstructed.
Yeah, there's a ring that goes all the way, almost all the way around. It looks like. So if you scroll down just a little bit, there's another good.
There you go. Yeah. So basically, half that wheel is going to be a gas side, the other half is going to be a brake side, and the ability to, you know, have some decent travel to work with to be able to do that. So anyway, I thought that was really cool. Not the only option. In fact, I think we've covered this one on the show before. This is like kind of a bolt-on hand. This is more like what you'd see on a bicycle for the shifting, you know, upshift, downshift on a bike hand
like a
lever.
derailleur.
Yeah, but it actually operates the gas and brake in the same manner with a lever. I call it a lever instead of a button or a clicky paddle, you know. But the moment it's a lever and you have that variable from 0 all the way to 100%, you can be very accurate. I mean, think about, you know, how accurate some people are.
Well, RC World, right?
Yeah.
Thumbsticks and then the pistol grip stuff.
Yeah.
For the cars. I mean, you know, those guys are really accurate.
And you can do that. I've bought that controller for the RC. What's it called, Brandon?
The VRC. Yep.
VRC Pro. Yep.
And you can use it on anything. It's a gas.
Yeah, I play with it every once in a while. It's cool. That sounds bad. Don't take that out of context. It's a little more than once in a while.
This to me is really amazing. That it's gone, you know, obviously they were pushing the boundaries of that in real life motorsport, and how quickly sim racing has adapted to it. I think it's awesome for the possibilities that it gives people.
I liked how on a long-term scale, like if you're a 12-year-old kid and you did watch 24 and maybe you're, they're disabled children, sim racing is a great activity for doing exactly that, and having good controls could actually put them on a path where they can think of, auto racing as a viable, something they can do.
Right.
Whereas maybe that was something that would have just been off the list. Like, well, that's something I can't do. And I hate to put it so bluntly, but I think it's a great thing because you, just like our next story, but you could start off a sim racer and be groomed to be a real life racer, disabled or not.
It's very cool. I really like stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. So what's next? And then we'll get into our discussion.
We got Lando Norris getting interviewed here, talking about his sim racing, just how he stays on top of things. Basically, sim racing is his life outside of real racing, and they talk about, basically his experience has only been in about 5 years. So they attribute that to his sim racing keeps him sharp and allowed him to get to the level that he's at already. So if you want to read on he talks about his equipment and just basically why sim racing is important, what that entails. It's an interesting read.
That's pretty cool. Makes me kind of sad though, I been doing this 20 years, and if you got the skills, it only takes a couple.
Well, yeah.
It's not a shocker to me though. Let's see, I was go-kart racing in 2002-ish. And I remember vividly being at the track all day and then getting home because I had a sim race that night. And it was like there was no amount of real life on-track driving that had me not still come home and sim race at night. So I totally get it. I can see how even Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, it seems like if he's not racing, he's sim racing. He's sim crashing. He's never mind. I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna shut up. Mouth muff.
I did like in that story how they talk about how it's not uncommon for Lando to spend 5 or 6 hours a day training on a sim to try and keep his skills up there or elevate them. And it's kind of a cool testament because motorsport.com's not just, Steve's motorsport blog or anything. It's, it's a legitimate thing. And
turn to them. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I mean, we've referenced them before. You've referenced them a lot on your show, but it adds legitimacy to the idea that we all, excluding the guys that actually have done real motorsport like Billy and know that it overlaps, but the guys that really haven't raced in real life, and you think, okay, could my skills in sim racing make it to where I could actually race in real life? And this is the extreme of that, right? The guy's obviously got skills to where he's going clear to a Formula One, satellite seat. I mean, that's the extreme example, but it lends credibility to that idea.
Yep. And he's not the only example. He's just one of the best examples, but that's that. And I think that's something that's beautiful about sim racing is that is becoming a much bigger normal than it used to be. The amount of racers and sim racers simultaneous is through the roof compared to what it was 10, 20 years ago. So it's not just a game anymore, that's for sure. I mean, it's not racing real cars, but it's not a game. It's far from that.
It's not a video game. It's a simulation.
I guess that takes us to eSports, Shaun, and what we have next.
Hey, where did that story go? Oh, here it is. This is
it.
It.
On that iRacing draft.
So the iRacing draft, which has already happened, by the way. Let's just be clear. They've been so weird with this one. And it's such an awesome thing. So it's like they're being weird with what is super awesome. But maybe it won't be weird. We'll find out in 2 hours because apparently the draft has already happened. but it is being aired today at noon, my time, 3 o'clock Eastern time. See the results of the first ever eNASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series driver draft. And that was posted 23 hours ago, talking about today at noon. And then if you scroll up a little bit, this is at the iRacing feed. Roush Fenway is saying they can't wait. Evan Pasaco is saying 12,000 in bonuses on the line for the draft. Interesting. Didn't know there's money on the line for the draft. Not sure if that was worded correctly. Don't quote me on that. That was him. And then Logitech G2 eSport has said we have drafted their first 2 drivers, so we know it's already happened. And someone want to take a guess who? Or would you rather wait until the big reveal, which is coming up again at noon? So anyway, the first iRacing Peak Antifreeze draft will be aired at noon. And I guess I'm definitely going to have to tune in for that. I got to make sure I set an alarm so I can at least put that on one of my screens while I work. Anybody else going to tune in?
I'll start it. See if it keeps my interest.
Wood Brothers gets first pick. That would be it. So will they pick Ray Alfala? Is that just automatic?
No, I thought I could be wrong, but I thought Wood Brothers already announced who they picked.
Did they?
But I'm not positive.
I guess they could announce. I guess if you have first pick, you can announce who you're going to pick.
How do they establish who picks first? Is it like, drawing straws, or what's the method there?
I don't recall. I don't think they... Did you hear?
They start with Festivus. The feats of strength.
Rochambeau Fest, yeah. Giant round of rock, paper, scissors.
Oh, my. All right. And then also...
Well, that's interesting.
Chili Bowl.
Yeah, I watched the...
You know more.
Racespot did a big... Yeah, Racespot is doing a big deal about the Chili Bowl. It was a fee to enter the Chili Bowl, and you had to have a minimum I rating as well, which it was fairly low. And I watched the first night, the first qualifier. So if you're not familiar with the Chili Bowl, it is one of the biggest races, at least in the United States right now, that you could do. So hundreds of entries, and so Racespot decided to do their own Chili Bowl. There's qualifier nights, so it's like Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is what they're doing. And it's by random. You just get put in a night, and it's a random draw for the heat, and you get passing and finishing points. And all these points throughout the qualifying nights seed you into the main event. So the A main is the one that you want to get to. That's where you actually get the money. You make it to Saturday night, and wherever you're seated, if you're down in the C, D, E main, you've got to try to work your way through, finishing the top 2 or 4 or whatever the transfer positions are to get to that A main. So there's a lot on the line as far as most people are concerned.
Was that larger grids than normal somehow?
No.
It looks like a lot of cars at that one point.
Yeah, they're putting heat races, and so I think there were 8-car heats, if I'm not mistaken, and then 20-car preliminary mains and stuff like that. So anyway, I watched it, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Some of the racing was great. Like, people were really clean, making awesome passes, and then other people are just over their head, not respecting other people on the track. And it just, I wish people would just back it up just a little bit and realize that you making a hero move, if it's the last lap and you're going for that transfer spot, then I get it. But if you're not even going to make a transfer spot, you're trying to get your way through the field and you're just banging off boards and everybody else, and then you end up flipping upside down, taking 3 people out with you. You just got to slow down. Just calm down a little bit. You weren't going to make it to begin with. You'd have a better shot of making it if you would have just waited. Maybe not have taken that chance right then. Maybe waited one more lap, and the guy might have made a mistake, and then you go cleanly by and keep going and keep trying to work your way through the field. But it highlighted a very good and bad point in just, I think, online racing in general.
Do you think that the inside-outside aspect of dirt oval is more difficult in sim than the same inside-outside racing of like road racing in sim? I mean,
What do you mean inside outside?
well, in dirt racing, like when I dirt race on dirt ovals and you're doing the whole sideways around the corner thing, it's like the way you're going around corners is, well, sideways, so you're kind of looking a different direction. And when you're inside and outside of somebody, it doesn't seem like the boundaries of where you are is quite as clear as when you're road racing. And I just don't know.
No.
You know, I've never dirt oval raced. It's like one thing I've never even dabbled in. So it's like I don't even know. I can only go by what I watch on TV and what I've done in sim. And it's like, oh, it just seems like it's really hard to judge that distance versus in road racing. I just know that guy's never coming back down, you know, or I don't know. It just seems like the lines seem more clear. But I mean, I have so many more laps in road racing than.
Yeah, but I would argue that I've seen the same thing.
Right.
Where people don't give enough room, where people just automatically assume. And I think that's where I'm coming from is if we're going to talk about dirt oval racing specifically, you kind of know. You just know that there's a possibility that that guy can move over on you. So you take the risk. And it's no different here. I don't feel like if I'm going to run the bottom, I know I can stay on the bottom of the track. But every once in a while, something's going to happen because it's unpredictable. So you, as the guy that's on the outside, have that choice to make. Do you keep your foot in it, trying to get around the guy on the outside, right? You're in the risky position. Or do you pedal the car and wait and try to make another move later? I've seen it, and I'm not citing one sim specifically, but I've just seen it in road racing and in asphalt oval racing as well. You know, people's like, well, how come that guy didn't give me room? Well, you could have lifted. There is a gas and a brake pedal. Like they both
That's
work,
crazy.
not just one, you know? So it's like, yeah, I mean, you could argue that the guy shouldn't have come over on you, but I could argue that you saw that coming and you did nothing about it. So I don't know. I look at it that way more than it's unpredictable per se.
Right. All right. Well, it looks, I mean, at times, like you said, I've seen some guys doing some really gifted stuff and some good racing going on, and then I've seen some just, you know, and that's it. When I'm seeing the bad stuff, that's, I guess, where my issue is. It isn't even the same as when I see somebody, like, on TV. So, again, my only reference when it comes to dirt oval is what I've watched on TV, and it's like, when I've seen somebody do something wrong on TV and he backs out, it doesn't become this, like, nightmare situation for everybody else around him as much as it seemed to be going on here in this one.
Yeah, again, there were guys that really knew how to drive that were doing really well. In my opinion, they were making good, clean passes. That track's really tight. It's not easy to make passes on that track to begin with, and it's actually a very difficult track to drive with that midget. It is hard to hang on to, but you only go as fast as you know you can go. And when you start pushing that boundary in traffic instead of practicing on your own, that's when bad stuff happens. So I think it's a great idea. I think that I hope the event goes on and it comes back next year. They had live admins, which was great. We just talked about that. So I think that's a plus. So they did a lot of right things. They actually parked a couple guys for rough driving.
Yep.
So that was good. I just, my wife, she also raced sprint cars, and she was watching part of it with me. And then it got to one of the B mains to get into the A, and she's like, what in the world is going on? This is awful. And I was like, yeah, I know. I don't have a way of explaining that.
For me, I watched the same thing, and for me, I don't know. It's with the blossoming of esports, and a lot of these drivers are trying to make a name for themselves, and a lot of those guys that I saw kind of questionable driving from seemed like they were kind of aligned with some of the more well-represented teams there. a lot of drivers, cars look good. You know, they could tell they put in a lot of effort. And I don't know if it was just them out of desperation making questionable moves, or if it was, you know, just a lack of, I don't want to say lack of driving ability, because to even get there, I would think you'd have to be fairly decent. But from an outsider looking in, yeah, and I see you shaking your head. It's like, from an outsider looking in, you know, which is it? Is it, hey, anybody can get in there and do this, or is there so much pressure on them to perform to try and become an esports racer?
Right. It's a bit of a pressure cooker, I think. There's some validity to that. And I think it goes across everything. Go ahead.
People just don't settle down enough in sim racing. Like, when that green flag drops, everyone's just like way over the top. And it's like, if a race goes green for even a few laps, all of a sudden you see everyone mellow out. But that cutthroat, and it's every drop of the green, so every caution means we get to do the whole thing again, where all of a sudden the guy in fifth thinks he's a hero, and he's going to somehow, despite, again, we all watch racing on TV, there's no hero move from fifth to first, but in sim racing, every fifth place starter somehow, some way is convinced they will be the one.
Well, do you think that is because there's a wider talent level, per se, and you have so many more people competing than you would in real world motorsport? Do you think that's just a function of there being such a wider pool? So, yeah, maybe they all have, for instance, the same rating like we were talking about before, but maybe the skill level still isn't that close. So you have a guy that knows he's quick, that had a bad qualifying run or something, that's starting his road race and goes, I'm faster than all these guys. I can pass them in the first three corners and get the hell out of here. You know, is it just because there is a larger disparity in talent and speed than maybe the real world? I don't know.
I think that's part of it, and the next thing I'm going to say, I think actually is probably going to piss some people off. I think that I think sim racing is guilty of people's skills being better than their mental preparation. In real life, whether you're talking racing or soccer, athletics, any competition, man, as you've gotten better over the years, you've got mental aspects that grew as well. And I just don't think sim race, like, we game our sims, and so we're not taking the time to reflect mentally about what we've done and how we did it. And again, getting back to little factors like paying for repair damage, going to the hospital. Funny how much reflection that creates. I remember in practice, I had one pretty basic wreck with my teammate, well, my unofficial teammate, my buddy who I raced with all the time. And we wrecked, and it cost me, like, a couple grand. And boy, did it make me think about being that aggressive coming off a corner behind somebody. And, and I just don't think that we've taken the time to mentally grow. And I think that people, like, if you go to pre-race in Formula One and you look at those drivers sitting in the car before the race starts, they're like already in 100% focus mode. And I'm guilty of what I'm about to say. I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh, 30 more seconds. I can refill my coffee. I can take another leak real quick. I can check my phone, see if I got any messages. I'm not sitting in my rig, focusing on the moment and treating it like it's a piece of competition. Even in serious cases. I mean, in the most serious cases, I'm all business. But you have to get pretty serious before I get all business. So I'm even guilty of these things. And I think that's part of it, too, when you talk about the green flag. Because, again, look at, like, the 24-hour endurance race. The first 3 laps were some of the nastiest, craziest driving I'd ever seen. And by the 4th lap, everybody was being cool. And it's like, what? Nothing changed. What? You were okay with 5th now, but you weren't then, I I don't think people give enough credit to the fact that they've probably qualified or gridded in an order that makes sense somehow, some way, like through the processes of what we do. By the time qualifying's over, for the most part, unless you botched your qualifying, we're kind of in an order of where you belong, and there's no reason a guy who is a second off the pace is suddenly going to magically be faster because the green flag dropped. So why do you think, and most of the people we race against, we do know. So why all of a sudden do you think you're faster than that dude that you're never faster than, and he qualified ahead of you for this one, and just because there's an opening, maybe you got to kind of go back to the fact that you couldn't even defend that position if you got it, unless you got it by those means.
So I just sent you a link. I don't know if you can show it.
I'm gonna
YouTube video.
Yeah.
In Discord. And this is me having a terrible qualifying night. And the second day, I start like in the middle of one of the lower mains. And I've got to try to get my way from there to the A main on night 2. And the result is a little bit of impatience on my part and somebody not doing something correctly. So I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, I wrecked pretty good.
Oh, time for Billy. Billy show and tell.
We're going to play that again. Oh, it's playing again.
Let's put this in perspective, Billy. This that Shaun's showing, give us a monetary amount or a physical repercussion amount.
Oh, that car was junk. So, motor was salvageable. Most of the other pieces on the car were not. I had to go get the chassis repaired. Luckily, it was just the front clip. But you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars, at least. Tail tanks done, all Nerf bars, all the wheels, the rear end, the rear axle, the front axle, all the radius rods, wing slider, the wing. You know, the wings alone right there are probably a good. After powder coating and stuff like that, you're probably talking a good, I don't know, $1,200 at least, $1,500, just junk. And that was a product of me getting a really, really good start.
And you just ran over the guy ahead of you?
Well, the guy on the inside did something you're not supposed to do. He kind of did almost a Scandinavian flick going into the corner, but you don't do that. So what happened was I got a really good start. And I'm pushing the guy and basically pushing the guy in front of me, and he swung out, and it ran over my left front and collapsed the left front, and I had no control after that point, and it just sent me flipping. I had a mild concussion.
I was gonna say, are you out cold? You didn't move much.
No, because the way I'm sitting, the cars are still running, coming at me. So as I'm
so you're still like cocooning.
Yeah, I'm like this because I can literally see cars coming at me at full speed. I was at the front of the field, so I still had half the field coming towards me when I flipped. Whoops. So I literally landed, cage open at the top because the wing had come off, and I'm literally staring at cars coming at me at full speed. So you just do this and you go, oh please.
So financially, that was probably more than 99% of us having our whole sim setup, computer, all our gear and everything. Physically, how'd that feel?
Just throw it all out the window.
It hurt a lot. That really hurt because I was hitting the ground so hard when I was flipping. I thought other cars were hitting me. That's how hard I was hitting the ground. And when I got done, like the safety crew rushes over. And they start asking me like those, who's the president, what day it is, do you know where that? And so like, yeah. And I climb out of the car. Everybody, claps because apparently I'm okay. And I start walking off the track. I mean, the car's just completely destroyed. And instantly, like my hand hurt. I had hit my hand on something. It could have been the steering wheel. It could have been something else. But I lost 2 fingernails. And like my hand was all purple and blue.
Whoa.
And so I walked over to the EMTs on site, and they, checked my hand, and they said, no, we just think you've just got really bad bruising. We don't think you have anything busted, but if it continues, then you need to go to the hospital. And they're asking me about my head, and I'm like, Oh, I'm fine. Man, my head was ringing. I mean, I sat there in the car after I got out. I stood up and I like, nobody noticed, but I was like, whoa. Ow. It kind of took a second to compose myself, and I'm walking back and my brother's helping me. He's got my gear, and as I walk into the trailer, I like stuck my hands in the ice box that we had, the cooler with ice in it, because they started hurting so bad, and I was just like, this is gonna hurt. I messed up my shoulder. It took it a good 2 months before I could lift my arm like that again. Like, yeah, even though you're pretty safe, I mean, you're cocooned in that car pretty good, that hurt a lot.
And did it change your drive? I mean, it can't change your driving.
No, I was still stupid.
Yeah.
I was still a moron after that. I mean, I look at it this way. I just said, you know, I could have played it safe and been in the back, or I could have given myself the opportunity to do something. I don't feel like I did anything wrong, but I could have been a little more patient and perhaps not push the envelope. So there were situations that I got in that like that again, and I might have lifted just a little bit to give myself a little more breathing room, but mentally it didn't change the way I drove. It just
no, but see, and that's the thing, and I think you learn faster when it hurts and when it costs money. Like, we're racing, right? You don't stop racing, or there's no point in doing what we do. But you do learn to sense those moments and to start to learn the concept that there's no one moment that's going to be worth dumping it all, because now I'm out.
Right.
So you start to protect just, you know, and even if you're only talking 5% aggression, you know, I think that, and that's kind of when we were talking safety rating. You know, it's like, well, it's not going to stop people from racing. It's just going to make them.
You just need to give that little, whatever room you think you're giving, just give a little extra.
Just that little more, and that would save it all.
Netcode.
Yeah.
Yeah, netcode. Netcode. That seems to be really bad lately too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, and I think it should inflict pain. I watched Ready Player One again last night, and you know, if you get, you know, if you're wearing one of them haptic suits and you get hit, it, you know, it's like you felt they were all. I was watching it again specifically for that, and you know, they're reacting like, ow, you know, and it's like, well, because it inflicted pain, and it's like, okay, and I'm not talking about to the point of needing medical attention. Maybe it won't ring your bell, but I'll tell you what, if you got hit from behind and it put a shockwave through your spine, you'd probably be a little more protective.
Just some sort of deterrent, basically, to clean up the driving.
Yeah.
So, small anecdote real quick. I see Stan mentioned, not a 10 though, there was no blood from what I saw. Funny story. Very quick side note. The guy that was wrenching on my car was doing 2 cars. So my car and another car. Well, the other guy had a terrible qualifying night as well. He was the race after me or before me. I don't remember which. Maybe it was after. And he flipped in the same corner. And one of the radius rods came off the car, went through his helmet.
Oh.
And hit him in the forehead. Just enough. Didn't, like, you know, completely puncture, but it broke the skin just enough. But it went through his helmet. Brand new helmet. Went right through it like this. And so he's just bleeding mixed with sweat. He's just poor. I mean, it looked so much worse than it was. But yeah, they took him to the hospital and the whole 9, and he was fine. But it, you know, it's same thing could have happened to me. A year later, basically the same kind of crash happened to another guy that we ran with, Peter Murphy, and he got hit in the head with the cage. You know, somebody came and just drilled the top of the car, and the Nerf bar and everything went right into the cage and hit him on the helmet and messed him up for a while. He was retired, and he had to relearn how to walk and talk and the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's crazy.
it's no joke. Sim racing usually is much safer.
It should be.
Well, And, as much as we want realism and we want, like we'll use this Chili Bowl, for example, to bring it full circle, we want realism, right? We want this to be an actual simulation, an analog of real life racing. On some levels, it shouldn't ever
Kind of
be
don't.
that. Yeah, because
kind of don't want that.
That's the beauty of sim racing is we can turn a bazillion laps if we want. We can. We don't have to, we put the thing in the fence, learning how to drive something. We don't have to whip out the checkbook and say, sorry, little Johnny, you're not going to college, or have to work into our 80s because we have no retirement money. It's about being able to do this and be able to do it over and over and at affordable cost, and that's a lot of the thing that keeps most sim racers out of doing real life racing in the first place, is the cost involved.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That it does.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we've thoroughly exhausted that.
Well, I've got something that I wanted to propose to you guys. So, a question, get your input on it. But I know this has been covered before in different places in the community. But I value your opinions, and I'm curious what you guys think about this. And I know that we've been ramping up for our endurance stuff. Practice has begun. We're pretty intense in my opinion, for what we do for our training, trying to help everybody and get them up to speed. I know Billy's not a big fan of going and just turning laps for the sake of turning laps and going in circles. Shaun seems to have this innate ability to just jump into a practice session, and with his experience, he's just fast. And any practice he does from there, it just shaves that little percentile off the top to get to the razor's edge. How do you guys feel what the balance is, the proper balance is for the amount of practice you should do for something? So, you talk about guys not being prepared for particular situations or the racecraft versus hot lapping. How much work should somebody do to get prepared for an event?
I would tell you, here's where the hard part is. I would tell you the best practice is racing with other people. And unfortunately, when you're practicing for an event like that, you don't really get that until you do it, because there's only so many hot laps you can turn. And even if you're practicing with others, it's not quite the same thing. You don't get put in the same scenarios. So there is no replacement for actually racing. And so I tend to practice because I'm working on a setup. And once I have a good setup, then I don't turn a million laps. I turn laps until I feel like, okay, I'm kind of hit my plateau. I need to reflect. I might do, so that may be an hour after the setup's all done. And then I look at it and go, okay, before the race, I just need to turn a handful of laps just to get myself, refamiliarize myself with what's going on. And then that's it. I think a lot of people turn so many laps and put so much preparation it almost becomes a defeatist part of it, because if you get taken out in the first turn and you put in 100 hours, like how dejected are you, right? I mean, I did in the big car. I'd go to a track and get involved. I've wrecked it in qualifying one time because the car just didn't stick. And it's kind of like, I towed all the way up here, dude. Like, right. Oh my God, I spent all this money, got up here. And so while we may not be investing a monetary value, we are investing our time. And so there's a balance. To me, that balance is when you're familiar with the track, you can literally recall the turns and where you should be on the track without forgetting what corner you're at. And then cleaning up your lines. Again, we go back to the mindless practice thing. If you're just turning laps without paying attention, then you might as well not even get on the sim and practice at all, because you're not doing anything. You're just mindlessly making laps, and there's no improvement. You're not moving your line. You're not testing things. Then you're wasting your time.
Totally.
So make practice for you, whether that's 1 hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever it is, the most effective it can be. And turning endless laps is not going to make you faster.
Nope. My answer to that comes back, for certain, it's going to be different for everybody, first of all. If you're still, like Billy said, forgetting corners, like where you are, things like that, you obviously need more laps. If you're still spinning the car, if you're still struggling to finish laps, you definitely need more laps. But at the point that you're a competent driver and you have the driving line down for the most part, there's a couple of factors for me. Number one, at some point, if you start running consistent laps and you're seeing a plateau, it's probably about time to call it quits, unless you're going to do something different. So, you know, I think when you just run laps unnecessarily because you get to a certain lap time, you're like, okay, I'm running 48s all day long. So then you run 48 all day long for 6 days in a row. It's sort of the definition of insanity. It's like, well, what are you expecting to happen? Like, nothing's going to change unless you do something different. And I'm not saying attempt different lines as much as that's the point that if you want to continue driving, you need to start, working on a setup. And if everything's perfectly cozy and you're not planning on, well, only work on the setup if there's something about it you want to change. I mean, it's not like, you know, you don't just shotgun mechanic your setup. It's like, well, you should have something you're trying to do, not just clicking around and see what happens. There should be a reason for what you're doing, for the most part. And then at the same time, maybe if it's through analysis, like you're watching your replays and you're like, oh, wow, I am consistently putting the car there, and I'm sure there is a better spot. Or watching someone else and seeing what they're doing. So as long as you're trying new things, I don't think you can get over practiced as long as that's, but again, that has to be a big part of it. For this Sebring event, coming back to why we're doing this, okay, we came out of the gates and I'm like, wow, we're like race ready. I wish the race was next weekend because like half the team's already up to speed. We could do a few more practice sessions and pretty much be in race trim, you know, mentally speaking. And I'm like, oh, wow, how are we going to kill time for a month? Because if we're that ahead of the game, that's a lot of downtime and a lot of potential for guys just turning laps unnecessarily because we've scheduled practices. At which point I come back to what Billy said, especially for an endurance race. We have enough guys involved that we might have to switch the mentality of our practice to race conditions. And it's like, okay,
you can get offline, so you know how to make adjustments when you need to move in different spots on the track where passes aren't going to work. And that's where, to me, that's more valuable. I mean, once you turn enough laps and you're just clicking off those laps, like, your muscle memory's kicked in, everything's kicked in. Like, you should be able then, unless you have an issue, I guess, you should be able the next day to go back out on the track and virtually do the same thing. So really like when we were doing Daytona testing, I tested draft going into hard corners. And when I moved offline to make a pass, like what did I need to do? Those, I find, that's more valuable, right? We talk about the Racecraft part of it. That's more valuable than turning a million laps in perfect conditions.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
At Daytona is a great example because at Daytona, the aero difference going to turn one completely changed the braking zone. Like, if you went in a draft, I mean, like, I don't know if a lot of people even realize they're going, like, 6, 7, 8 miles an hour faster because they're in the draft. And you better brake more because you were going fast. The other is you have less grip on the front of the car because you have dirty air. You know, it's like, and that changed everything. And if all you did was hot lap for a month, you won't even know that until you are in that scenario. Getting back to our testing, you know, we're going to have to make a few guys grab the Daytona prototypes. You know, at Daytona, the fast guys can be really patient because there's so much room to get around cars at Daytona. At Sebring, that's not quite the case. And
right. And you've got a lot of corners and a lot of complex corners.
And really slow corners where they can be outbroke really late.
So you've got to, you know, eyes in the mirror when if you know somebody's behind you, and Just let them go, give them room, that kind of thing. So that's the kind. To me, I enjoy racing. It's hard for me to practice a lot because I get bored. So I have to find ways to, what do I need to improve upon? And then I get to a point where I'm like, okay, I've had enough. Like, I'm going to start getting worse if I keep doing this. And racing is what helps me understand more of what I can do with the car and what I should look out for. So,
yeah.
Agreed.
But that's awesome input, and hopefully that helps, people watching, or, somebody that might watch this later, as far as helping find pace or comfort in the car. I know for myself personally that I try and stay away from the tune for a couple reasons. One being, I'm not a great tuner. I know enough to get myself in trouble, just like computers. It's one of those deals. But the other thing is that I always try and find a tune that, as long as it's not just totally disagreeable with me, that I have a reference, right? And know that somebody ran, this time at this track, and if I can improve myself to get up within a reasonable distance of where they're at, then that's acceptable to me. But if I'm, way off their pace, I don't start looking at the tune, because obviously the logic should be, hey, there's something I'm doing wrong that I need to improve my driving. I should probably chase that before I start clicking on tire pressures or spring rates.
And I think that's a common mistake. Not mistake that you did. I'm just saying people messing with setups before they're ready to is a common mistake, because this real quick before we go, this is how I line up practice for me. I don't touch the car setup unless something is so atrociously bad that I can't make it around the track, right?
Yep.
So I get something that doesn't run out of gear and I can make the corners. I'm not getting into the setup part. And then I just go turn laps. And I watch my lap time go down, go down, go down. And then I come in, sit for a minute. If I have a replay available, I'll watch the replay. I'm missing it here. I'm missing it there. I go back out, work on those spots, improve my lap time. However long that takes. Sometimes it literally only takes me, a handful of laps. And then other times it might take me an hour, depending on the car. And then it becomes, okay, I'm not really gaining anything now. So now I'm going to start playing with the setup a little bit. And then I go back out. Did that help? And then I go back and forth. And then I start working on the setup. And once I've got the setup how I want it, then I go back and turn some more laps to see if now can I put everything together, and is there anything else I'm leaving on the table now that the setup is theoretically better? And that's it. That's how that practice goes. And once I've got that established, then I will try to get in traffic or some sort of race so that I know the different scenarios on that track that I can put myself in and what to avoid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for answering that. Do you guys have anything else to add to it?
That's it for me.
No, I mean, in iRacing where you have a relative and your deltas and all of those kind of things, I think that a lot of, now you can make the argument, like, here's my optimal, here's the best time I've ever run. And let's say there's still, and this is a big difference between aliens and norms. My average is, I'm usually like 0.8 of a second off of my optimal. And so it leaves you with this, well, I know I can do it. So even though I'm not gaining any speed, I'm still desperately turning laps because I know I can do it. Look, it's right there. The proof's right there. And yet, that's where I come back to the whole observation thing. Well, yeah, but have I taken the time to go look at that lap? Like, go find that lap that you supposedly were 0.3 up, and what did you do on that lap? Because if you're not recreating it, and you've tried 100 laps since to recreate it and haven't yet, it's not going to happen. So you've got to go back and find out why and put it to use or practice. And if you're not doing that, then you are wasting your time. And in real life, we talked about how real life cures certain behaviors through pain or finances. Same is true of over practice.
Yeah.
The finances and even the pain, because anytime you're on track, something can go wrong and you can crash and find yourself in the hospital. It's going to prevent that as well. There is too much practice for sure if you're paying for it. I mean, it's only cost me 50 cents a hosted session. I can afford that loss.
Well, that's great. That's fantastic information. Billy, you got any stuff coming up on your channel or anything going on this weekend?
No, I'm going to get back to playing a little bit of Resident Evil 2. Because I played that over the last weekend and screwed myself, got myself in a corner with that game that I had to restart. So,
oh, no.
Yep. Actually, I don't mind. It takes me back to what original Resident Evil was about. So that I might mess around. I've got reviews that I put off because I just wanted to drive. I've enjoyed doing the salute to, so like the 24 hours and now the Bathurst stuff. Like I've been enjoying that. So I don't know how soon I'll get back to the reviews, but I do have about 3 that are partially done. That at some point, look, they're not new. That stuff's already been out, so it's going to be just more of an opinion piece than anything, and I think people know that, so they'll get out when they get out.
How about you, Shaun?
Oh, I've got a Ricmotech. It's right there. I don't know if you guys have seen this thing. It's such a insane piece of work. I got the Ricmotech handbrake that I mentioned I was working on. That review will be coming out tomorrow. We've got endurance practice, which we've been talking about. I'm excited about. Not sim racing related, and maybe I'm just bragging now. No, it's not that braggadocious. I have a Lucky Dog race, like Lemons, but it's Lucky Dog. It's like a different sanctioning body of jalopy racing. Coming up in a little less than a month. I have a practice day a week from tomorrow. I'm kind of excited about it. No. I'm through the roof excited about it.
No, I can't tell that you're excited about it. You can't hardly keep the smile off your face.
And it's so funny because we have this conversation. We had this conversation off the air, but we talked about it on this show. Like, would you race a lawnmower? What would you race, and what you'd race versus what you'd purchase to put in your garage and say that's my race car might not be the same thing. And I think I'm like in a 1990 Volvo 240 turbo, in teal blue, if I'm not mistaken. So It's like, no, that's the thing. It's like, I don't even know if I'm going to post a picture. I'll post pictures. But it's like, it's such the lowest rung of racing on planet Earth. But there's going to be like 100 cars. It's a 24-hour race. I'm so pumped. So I'm already, I'm like, okay, good. Well, I'm going to have to take a few days off because, it's a race weekend on the 23rd, I think it is. And then next weekend I have a practice day, that I'm really looking forward to. It's been a while since I've been in a car. It's been a while since I've been at Button Willow. It's been a while.
It's a great track, by the way. I love Button Willow.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It is a really fun track to drive. Some really, I've always wanted to
look like it has elevation changes when you're standing there looking at the track, but when you get out on the track, when I went around the first time and we were racing, all of a sudden there's a back section that does this almost Laguna Seca-esque kind of thing. You're like, what?
Yeah.
Doesn't even look like it. And then they got this badass freaking super banked sweeper.
They have everything at that. It's like they got a tabletop. It's almost like a jump.
Yep.
It's like, wow, it's insane fun track. And supposedly the car I'm in is like slow, but like the best handling car in the race I've heard. Like this car is like dialed in is what I've been told.
Awesome.
So, I'm looking forward to it. It just makes me laugh. It's like, it's just like the conversation. It's like, on one hand, I'm really embarrassed. And then on the other hand, I couldn't be more excited. So I don't care what anybody thinks because it's like, yes, I cannot wait. And I don't know if I'll fit in my driving suit. I just bought this suit like last year and I'm already like, oh man, is there enough?
Oh, no.
I don't know if there's enough days between now and the race to change it.
Better hit that keto diet hard.
I'm gonna have to like go on Survivor just to like trim up, like 0 food for 7 days, and You know,
Just start doing the intermittent fasting thing.
does that work?
Just do the pit stops from a stationary bike.
I can't fast. I am a pig. You know, I just have always worked out enough to eat whatever I want, and now I don't work out. So now it's like, yes, enjoy your jowls, Shaun.
It happens to the best of us.
On that note, anything else? What about you, Brandon?
You know, full disclosure. So I've got a Podium direct drive pre-ordered. And as of late, I've kind of had this epiphany of sorts that I'm kind of thinking about I've already got some Fanatic rims, and I was just looking to upgrade, and I'm kind of at the point where I'm thinking I might just cancel the Podium and get me a 2.5. I'm going back and forth, and I'm thinking, yeah, you know, I got the DD2. It's $1,500 versus $500 for a 2.5. I don't know if the shortcomings of
hey, but direct drive wheels will make it so you don't ever spin out. I mean, that's what I've been told. So.
Oh yeah, and it's totally gonna not make me any faster. So it's you know, it's like I don't know. At my skill level, yeah, I get that it might longevity wise might be better and stuff, but for the money, I mean, I can buy 3 V2.5s for the price of one of those. So I don't know. I've been looking at Fanatic's website a lot lately. That's what I've been doing.
Should we help Brandon out in this time of need? Do we need to work him through this moment with the audience? I don't know.
This will get chat going, I'm quite sure, you know. But I think other than that, yeah, just trying to get better at Sebring, get comfortable in the car. Yeah, just some practicing and soul searching as far as, do I really need a Podium?
What are you on now? You're on a Thrustmaster.
Yeah, right now I'm on a TSPC Racer. So,
but you've driven on a 2.5, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you know at least what that wheel feels like.
Yeah, and I can tell it's an improvement. Power wise, I mean, I don't have this TSPC maxed out, so I don't think that's the argument that I'm trying to make. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like, there's enough there to communicate what it needs.
It's plenty strong. That thing is stupid.
Getting back to Ready Player One, a direct drive can hurt you. It can hurt you.
That's true, yeah. I need that haptic feedback. Do the Danica Patrick arm cross on my chest when I crash, you know, so.
It is such a tough question, Brandon. You and I have talked about this off there. I mean, in a nutshell, I don't know if, you know, 2.5 is an outstanding wheel, and if you're losing races, you're losing to somebody on a G29 or any wheel. I use that as my generic any wheel when I say G29. I don't literally mean a G29 every time. So it's like, yeah, does it matter? And it's a lot of money, but at the same time, you know, I'm a terrible golfer, and I do own Callaway clubs. I'm just going to say that. I am a terrible golfer, and I do own Callaway clubs. I am a terrible cyclist. Well, I used to be great, but now I'm a terrible cyclist, and I own a Colnago. You know, I guess there's this appreciation thing that I'll never downplay. So I'll always tell you don't need more than a G29, but I'll never downplay people's needs to have the best of the best for things they love and their hobbies, you know, and that's right. It's you know, I love my Colnago.
It's fun to have all the bells and whistles.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a tough one, Brandon. I'd hate to be in your shoes.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't want to be the guy that owns a Ferrari that can't drive it to save his life. You know what I mean? That guy. So. Or
the guy who's sitting here with these horrible first world problems of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's my weekend.
Awesome. Will you know by Monday?
I think so.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to tune in to find out. Will
Full report.
Brandon Waters settle with a 2.5 or hold out for the Podium?
There was a man with a TSPC racer, and on his mind, he really only had one thing: the 2.5.
That's what is
Tune
wrong.
in next Friday to find out his decision.
What's wrong with this world?
Pets and dogs living together. Yeah.
All right, you guys. Is that it for today?
I think so.
I think so.
I think so too. So everybody out there, get out there, do some racing, have some fun. Be sure to let us know what you're racing and what's cool in sim racing that we need to know about it. Have a great weekend. This is the Simpit. I'm Shaun Cole. That's Billy Strange. That's Brandon Waters. And we'll see you on the track.
See you guys. Thanks.
See you later.